The attack on All for One would be happening tomorrow. It was a bit fast, but Izuku just wanted all of this done and over with, so he made sure to spare no resources when it came to getting this in order as quickly as possible. But that didn't mean he didn't want this done right. Sure, he wanted this over with, but not to the point where he was willing to rush the process to the breaking point. This was an operation of the utmost importance. If anything went wrong, it could end in absolute catastrophe. So before everything started, he needed to check over the entire operation and make sure everything was in place. And so here he was at the lab making sure their attack force was ready. In front of him was All Might, the Gammas, Hawks, Sori, Protoman, and Sai. All Might had been restored and now looked the way he did in his prime. Although he still was using the dregs of One for All, as Eri had been unable to restore it due to its massive power. But at least he didn't have to worry about his body failing him. Alright, so is everyone aware of the plan? Izuku asked them. All Might will engage All for One. Gamma too, and I will support him from a respectable distance. And Sai will assist from long range. Gamma 1 explained. While Hawks lead the other heroes in evacuation. Meanwhile, Sori and Protoman will rescue Kiba once we locate her. That is correct, Izuku said, as Sue came up behind him, with a suitcase in her hands. And to aid you in this task, I have decided to give you these. Sue opened the case, revealing 2 Chaos Emeralds. Hawks. Sai. You'll be using these during the attack. Izuku said, as Sue walked forward, and gave the emeralds to the 2 of them. Hawks picked up the emerald, and immediately he could feel its power, coursing through his body and his wings. Man. This is certainly something. Are you sure about giving this to me, sir? Sai said, looking at the emerald. I failed you during the last attack after all. No. I failed you. Izuku said while shaking his head. I should have given you more forces to work with. It was basically just you and a bunch of children, powerful children but still children, versus some of the strongest villains out there. And even then, you just barely didn't finish the job perfectly. I have faith you'll pull through here. And besides, your quirk is the best suited for this task anyway. Izuku sighed. Of course, if you fail, I'll have no choice but to release Zero. That monster is finished? Hawks asked. Pretty much, Izuku confirmed. He's being kept in a kind of dream state, and can be activated at any time. I do hope you know the consequences of him being released. Yeah, catastrophic power. Could destroy a small country in a day. Nearly unstoppable. Gamma 2 said nonchalantly, as he leaned on Gamma 1. We get it, boss. But you don't have to worry. A villain like All for One could never hope to overcome us superheroes. And we have 2 emeralds, while he only has 1. True, but if you think about it, we can only enhance 2 people, while All for One can essentially enhance a whole army with all the quirks he stole. Izuku pointed out. Not to mention, we don't know what other tricks he might have under his sleeve. So be careful and don't do anything stupid. We just need you to stall for time, while we evacuate the area, and drop the reset bomb. Speaking of which, Izuku walked up to All Might and handed him Fractal. This Fractal will keep you safe from the bomb's effect. Make sure it doesn't break, otherwise, we'll have to rely on the Gammas to hold off All for One. Since their status as androids, keep them safe from the bomb. Understood, young Midoriya? I will keep that in mind. All Might said as he stored the Fractal. Alright, meeting dismissed, Izuku said. As he went to continue checking up on the rest of the operation. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX from an observation chamber. The bomb itself looked more like a giant mutated seed, with multicolored vines growing all around it. Apparently, the outside was just an added shell, to keep it from exploding at the slightest touch. The bomb is fully operational, and will be ready for tomorrow's operation, Achi reported. We also have 2 backups, just in case. Perfect. Izuku nodded. Continue with your work. And keep a close eye on these. Can never be too careful. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX only made for one driver, with larger back halves, capable of carrying large bombs. All the bomber ships have been tested, and are fully operational, Mai said. They're all ready for tomorrow. Izuku nodded. Good. And you're sure you want to be the one piloting them? That's a lot of pressure. Mai nodded. Yes sir. I want to make sure everything goes the way I want it to. And you know what they say. If you want something done right, do it yourself. I get that, Izuku said. Well, just make sure to get some practice in. And get plenty of rest before the operation. Understood? Yes sir, Mai said. Good. Izuku nodded. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX shelters. Due to the danger of the situation, simply getting everyone to a safe distance wouldn't be enough. If something went wrong, or a calculation on the bombs went off, everyone they tried to save would die. So shelters had to be made. These shelters appeared to be simply abandoned buildings at first. Just brick walls with a large metal door on the outside. This was necessary to avoid suspicion. Izuku pulled up to one of these buildings in his limo, and the metal doors opened. The inside still didn't seem all that impressive. The walls were made of metal, and all that was there was a ramp, heading underground. They drove down the ramp and headed deep underground. After a few minutes, they arrived at the end of the ramp, and into a large underground area that was capable of housing tens of thousands of people. There were beds, supplies, food, and other things just in case, for some reason, they had to stay down here for a while. They kept driving through the area until they reached the opposite side. There was yet another door. This one was much thicker, and guarded by 2 soldiers. "Halt! Identify yourself," one of them said, walking up to the car. Izuku opened his window, showed them his face, and then gave them a card. They took the card, and looked it over for a while, before giving it back to him. "Sorry for the wait, Mr. Midoriya." No, I'm glad you're doing your job properly," Izuku said, taking back his card and closing his window. The doors opened, and Izuku was driven inside. Behind these doors was the anti-warp generator, being guarded by soldiers and pro-heroes alike, and worked on by engineers and scientists. The car stopped and Izuku exited the vehicle, looking up at the building-sized devices, as the head scientist in charge here ran up to him. "Sir, everything is fully operational and ready for use," the man said. "And the other generators?" Izuku asked. They had set up multiple generators, in multiple locations, just in case any of them were damaged or destroyed. "All fully operational," the scientist said. "Everything is ready on our end." "And the towers?" Izuku asked. "Ready to use," the scientist said. "Good work." Izuku nodded, giving a sigh of relief. It was finally time to head back home. Although he still had one thing he needed to check on when he got there. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Everything is in order? Izuku asked, as he sat down on the couch and relaxed. I did a proper inspection of all the participants of this mission, Giza confirmed. And I found 13 traitors. Most of them belonged to the MLA, but some attempted to leak information to All for One. All of them were dealt with. Excellent, Izuku said, having Sue serve him some tea. Everything is in place. And things should move smoothly. Assuming there are no unmanageable surprises on All for One's part. You've prepared about as well as you can. Rest. Lest exhaustion be your downfall. Giza advised. Right. Izuku sighed. Although it's hard for me to fall asleep. Knowing that Kiba is still in the hands of that monster. About that, Giza said, stroking his beard. Ms. Uraraka came to visit you. And has been waiting for your return for quite some time now. What? Tell her I'm here then. Izuku told them. I don't want to keep her dash. Suddenly, Ochako opened the door and burst in. Izuku. Oh, Ochako. I'm sorry I kept you waiting for so long, Izuku said, giving her a forced and tired smile. Ochako frowned and looked at Sue and Giza. Could you two give us some time alone? Giza nodded, and Sue looked to Izuku, who nodded, giving her permission to leave. Once they left, Ochako took a seat right next to Izuku and gave him a concerned look. You don't have to put on that fake smile. Your eyes tell me everything I need to know. Izuku wanted to just dismiss that and tell her he was fine. But for whatever reason, maybe it was because he knew it was pointless, maybe it was because of the trust he had in Ochako, maybe it was because he was just that tired. But he instantly deflated on the couch, and a look of grief overtook his face. They took her Ochako, Izuku muttered. They took my daughter. My Kiba. They took her Ochako. Tears started coming out of the corners of his eyes. I was supposed to protect her. And now she's in the hands of those bastards. Izuku sobbed. Doing who knows what to her. Ochako quickly brought him into a hug and started rubbing circles on his back. I should have added more bodyguards. I should have given them better weapons. A Chaos Emerald. Anything. Izuku cried into her shoulder. I failed her. Izuku, look at me, Ochako said, moving Izuku up so he could look her in the eyes. You spent countless hours preparing for that fight. Spent more money than some countries spend in a year to try and keep them safe, used some of the most powerful and advanced technology in the world, and hired some of the most powerful and talented people in the country. All of this so you could defend what is essentially an orphanage. And it still wasn't enough somehow. That is insane. There is no reasonable person who could blame you for what happened because what happened was insane. No one could have predicted all the stuff they would throw at you for no good reason. If you knew what would have happened, I'm sure things would have turned out differently. And now that things have gotten like this, I'm sure you get her back. Without fail. Izuku didn't know what to say to that. He still wished he'd added at least one more guard on Monsta, but at the same time, he knew Ochako was right. More so, she was especially right about him getting Kiba back. He didn't care what it cost. He would get his daughter back. No matter what All for One had up his sleeve. Tomorrow he'd throw everything at the villains. But today, he would let everything out. He'd been forced to stay strong, this entire time, and not show just how much this whole thing was affecting him, for the sake of the children. So he had plenty of tears stored up, and Ochako was willing to stay there until he was all out.